Welcome to a brand new episode of Undisputed Anime. This is the podcast where we love to give you some top-notch recommendations. I'm your host, Galactic Pretty Boy himself, Zane Taicho, your captain of recommendations. And as always, I'm joined by the man of 100 mangas, Mr. TsutsuDae. How are you, good sir?
You know what? I've already told you this. I'm full. I'm really full of food, mate. Wouldn't you know it? Our Taicho here whisked me away for brunch with another friend, and I ate a lot, and now I pay for it. Even this many hours later.
Yeah, that's true. It was nice to have a little brunch, and then we had a stroll to the local bookshop and had a look at their manga selection, didn't we?
Peruse the selection, yes.
Mm.
Flick through the pages like the days of old.
Felt nice to be young for a little bit.
Yeah, even on a Saturday when it's the most busy.
This is it. Today's episode is, and I'd like to think this is a really cool one. Not only is today's episode sponsored by Surfshark VPN, thank you as always, link in description. But TsutsuDae, this is your kind of brainchild, isn't it? You've kind of put together a list of manhwa you think everyone should be reading.
Absolutely. So, as I have mentioned on many an episode, not only do I read an absolute boatload of manga, in recent months and years, I've really jumped on the manhwa train. Reading a lot of titles, I finish one and then I'm immediately trying to find another one. So I'm currently possibly juggling 20 or so that are ongoing at the moment. Yeah. And then it's great because then it comes out every week. I get a new chapter of all these different different titles. So I get to got stuff to read all week now. It's great. But yeah, I really think that manhwa is becoming a lot more mainstream. I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily that makes it any less mainstream than manga itself, but I do think that shonen manga, shoujo, like the traditional manga titles like Naruto, Bleach, Chainsaw Man these days, The Grey Man, things like this, they're what are capturing the attention the most. Where we've obviously got all of these amazing web comics that are getting so popular that they are getting published into books as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I do think that it's a much bigger deal now than it was. And as someone who reads a lot of them, I would like to share some that I think are very good.
What a great idea. Just to add on to that, I think the popularity of Webtoons, which is like the number one app to read manhwa, and I guess for those who've never come across this before, it's Korean based manga really, or comics, or something of the same vein really. So if you've never heard of the term manhwa, or just to bring you up to speed, that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before we get on with the rest of the news, I'd like to say a big thank you to this episode's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, which you can get 83% off and 3 months free if you go to surfshark.deals/undisputedanime and enter in the promo code undisputedanime, all one word. Surfshark VPN lets you trick your device into thinking it's in a different country, which opens up a whole world of content libraries. If you're in the UK, you could watch Japan Netflix, which will give you a far bigger selection of animes. If you're outside the UK, you could watch BBC iPlayer. And if you're in the US, you can finally get access back to the old WWE network. We've all been using Surfshark here at Undisputed Anime for a while, and it's our official VPN. And it doesn't just give you access to all the animes, it also secures your networks by encrypting internet traffic keeping your location and download history private, like my collection of shoujo mangas, which must be protected at all costs. My favourite feature for this is that Surfshark knows when my phone leaves a trusted connection, like my home or work internet, and it immediately turns on to prevent this interference. It's like having a JoJo stand for your phone. To sign up to Surfshark today, by using our link in the video description below, surfshark.deals/undisputedanime, which you can get 83% off and 3 months free if you go to surfshark.deals/undisputedanime and enter in the promo code undisputedanime. We really appreciate it if you at least check them out, as they've been great company and we love working with them. Support Undisputed Anime and support your internet privacy with Surfshark.
Wonderful. So, just as a disclaimer, what I'm going to talk today about is stuff that I like to read. Like with manga, it's obviously as diverse in genre as that, and I just have a very particular itch that I'm looking to get scratched when I read these. So, do forgive me if you're probably going to see a lot of similar themes, but I think that they're all great. They've all got their own like individualities and merits. But I guess that when it comes to talking about manhwa, at least with the stories that I like to read, it's first going over a couple of terms because they are recurring throughout. And those terms are reincarnation, gates, hunters, rankers, and what is that final word? Well, regression. There it is, regression.
Oh, wow.
So a common theme throughout all these gates. The best way that I can put it is that very much in a lot of these stories, it's very reverse isekai. I think gates serves the same kind of purpose as isekai,
right?
In manhwa, in that instead of a character being propelled into a different world which they've got to adapt, gates are a way that authors have basically found to have other worlds collide with the real world.
I see.
So typically, like, you'll have a world that goes on much like our own until one day these gates start opening everywhere, and from those gates monsters come out, and from the appearance of those gates some humans awaken as hunters or rankers, and they awaken like superpowers or magic, and they're the ones who then go on to defend humanity from these gates and close these gates and try and solve the mystery there. The other sorts of stories you get a lot of are reincarnation or regression stories, in that you'll have a character who is either gone through the end of the world or they've gone through an ordeal and it can go either two ways there. Either someone who's gone through all of that as a very regular person or not very strong, or they'll go through as they are the hero of humanity, or they are the last survivor, like last surviving hero, and then the story basically ends with them dying. And then after they die, they will wake up and it will be 3 years ago, or they'll have been reborn in a new body and stuff like that. But they still have all their memories of the previous playthrough of life. So then they go through that life knowing what's going to happen, and they have the foresight to be able to prepare for it and to try and change things.
I see.
So those are the main main plot points of stories that I personally like to read. As you know, I'm a massive fan of isekai just in general. So this sort of story really typically gets me good. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, please like and subscribe below for more Undisputed Anime. But I'm going to start. I'm going to just start really strong at the gate because I have to
Okay.
imagine that so many people have heard of this, and I've mentioned it on the show before. Solo leveling.
Solo leveling.
Solo leveling will forever be my favorite manhwa. It's beautifully illustrated. In fact, I believe.
There we go.
There we
Look
go.
at that.
There we go. See, I'm a professional. So we have solo leveling, which follows this beautiful gate and hunter concept. And it focuses on our main character, who is actually a very low ranking hunter. And he's struggling to get by in life. He's taking all of he's taking the jobs that he can get. But one day he finds himself in a situation where it's much more dangerous than he anticipated. And while he and the group he's part of are largely able to survive, he does not actually get out of the situation, and he dies.
Yeah.
Also, he thinks. But what then happens is he wakes up and he's in hospital. And he basically finds out that he's now got this new power, which is he's got access to this quest log. And through following the quest log and doing what the quest log tells him, he's able to level up and get stronger. And it's an ability that no one else on Earth has. And it allows him to develop very, very quickly. Until he's standing shoulder to shoulder with like the S rank hunters of the world, who are like the heroes. But the difficulty about talking about these titles is that like I obviously just want to gush and talk about all of the cool things that happen.
Yeah.
But I think the solo leveling itself was, I think, the first that's captured people's imaginations in quite the same way. Obviously, as we know, it's been announced to be getting an anime adaptation.
Yes.
Through Crunchyroll. It is obviously been adapted into physical versions of the comics now. There are like light novel versions of it. It's
audiobooks as well on Amazon.
Audiobooks. I honestly could not recommend this story more. And unfortunately, the original author actually did pass away later last year. However, even they were able to finish the story.
Yeah.
And in honor of the author, those who have worked on it are actually continuing the story for a little bit to show what happened afterwards. And it's currently ongoing at the moment. Great stuff. It's got all of the same charm as it originally did.
That's amazing. It's I think for a lot of people, and I think you may have said this to begin with, it's a lot of people's firsts, because I remember, as you mentioned, it was like the talk of the town. Like, you got to check this out. It's in color compared to its manga counterpart. It's completely digital, so it reads really nicely on webtoons and some of these other platforms.
Mobile devices. It's great. A great read on a mobile device.
It looks incredible. And yeah, I think it really did, as you say, not only capture people's imagination, the storytelling, the visuals as well, because we talk about the artwork being in color and stuff, but visually it's so dramatic, and there's no wonder why so many people wanted this to be animated, because every other panel looks like it could be a storyboard. Like, it's so
incredible how well. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily down to like how well it's drawn. I think the composition itself, I think the the manhwa composition is really very important. And if you can get it right, you get like these pages that like, it doesn't even feel like you're on a page anymore. It's just these frames that flow endlessly into each other. And you get these like massive long like action sequences that don't seem to stop. And solo leveling, like, I'm just gonna gush forever about it, to the point where I might actually, having talked about it today, I might reread it, because
I don't blame you, because it's definitely my first, manhwa that I started reading, and B, um, I was just so impressed with it because, again, both of us fans of isekai genre, we've seen quite a lot come and go, from Digimon right up to the Eminence in Shadow, being the new hotness. But even so, Sword Art Online and so much more, this was captivating in such a different way,
Yeah,
and things. So yeah.
it's good stuff. Good stuff.
If you're enjoying Undisputed Anime, make sure to leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify just down below.
Well, we're going to move on to my
Mm.
number two, and another one which I rank very, very highly, which is referred to as the omniscient reader's viewpoint.
Ooh.
This is actually, like many manhwa, this is actually a adaptation of a light novel,
Okay.
a web novel series, and that's been turned into a manhwa. And basically, the story is about a regular guy. He's not got a lot gone for him in life. He works at 9 till 5, if not longer, and he basically it loves reading like these like web novels. And there's a
Hmm.
particular one that he loves reading, which is called Three Ways to Survive the Apocalypse. And he's been reading it since it started, and he reads it up until its final chapter, and he finishes it. And when he finishes that final chapter, he then receives a because he basically he loves this story. It's gotten him through like so many hard times.
Hmm.
He gets an email from an unknown email address, and it turns out it's come from the author of this story, and they
Oh.
thank him for reading the book from the beginning up until it finishing. And they basically say, as a gift, like, I give you this, and they basically give them like a transcript of the entire novel. And then after that happens, the world ends. Like
No.
all of a sudden, the world ends, and no electronic devices no longer work.
Right.
There's no like signal, there's no web or anything you can't get on it. But what he quickly starts to realize is that what is happening in the real world is what happened in the novel.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so he basically gets to it turns into this like whole survival situation where these like I can't remember what they're called, but they're these like traditional like demon or goblins or demons in Korean folklore,
Hmm.
and they're basically it's basically YouTube. Basically the gods of all lands are basically watching this,
Uh-huh.
and they sponsor people, and they obviously want these people to survive these different scenarios. And
Hmm.
these goblins are the ones who are like kind of running the show. But he's basically got the foresight of now. No, he knows what's going to happen because he read it in the book, and he then goes on to meet the main character from the book, who is
No
a
way.
regress in the story. He is a regressor. He has lived the end of the world like tons and tons of times. But it becomes interesting because the main character knows
Yeah.
he knows what's going to happen because he's lived it before. But the main character of the story knows because he's read it. He starts to do things because he
Right.
knows that it'll help, and he starts becoming like this front running character. And
Yeah.
he's basically got this ability called omnis I can never say it, omniscient reader's viewpoints, which makes him
Mm.
able to look at other people's stats, look at other people's stories, and if he knows them well enough, he can like use a ability called bookmark, which allows him to use the skills of people that he knows well and stuff. It's very very good. It's a much deeper story than Solo
Right.
Leveling, I'd say. It's beautifully illustrated again.
Mm.
Um, Ongoing at the moment. And like I said, it's based off a web novel. So if people are into web novels still, they might have read this already. Um, right up there, it's so good. It's gotten without going into spoilers. It's so good.
That's
Um,
amazing. It sounds a bit like a almost like a future diary scenario, but as you say, like
yeah, I guess
a
so.
transcript of world events instead of the point of view of a person.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I guess I'll say it because you brought future, I'll say one thing
Mm,
which could be construed as a small spoiler, but I will say it anyway. In that, as the story advances, you actually meet another character
mhm.
who also seems to have the same ability as him. But what it actually
Ooh.
turns out to be is that this person actually plagiarized the original book that he was story that he was reading, but they had only read it up to a certain point. So they've got the transcripts up to a certain point of the story.
Wow. That's
So
interesting.
yeah, it's really cool. Lots of really interesting abilities, character interactions. Obviously, I said that there were all these different themes that go across all of these manhwa that I talk about. Another one which
Mhm,
I didn't mention is obviously the gods. Quite often in these stories, the
mhm,
gods have a stake in everything that's going on. Um, whether it be they are trying to help humanity or they're
mhm.
using humanity as their playthings. In this, the gods are obviously watching what is happening because they have a vested interest in what is going on because they sponsor these characters. They'll give them points and experience and abilities
Oh,
so
wow.
that they can be their champion. It's very, very interesting.
That's cool. I like that. It also kind of reminds me of BB Song as well, which is all about combating for the future and preparing and stuff, which is, yeah,
Yeah.
another really cool series. But yeah.
Right. On to the next.
Mm.
We're going to look into reincarnation of the suicidal battle god. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that these English titles are translated literally. I think
Yeah.
so. I imagine that it doesn't read quite as cumbersomely in Korean. But this is basically a story, like I said, of a hero, and he basically humanity was fighting the demon lord. He was a prominent hero. He raised up to got to the final battle. Everyone
Mhm.
else died. He was the last survivor, and he managed to survive. Well, no, sorry, I say that he basically died in this encounter, but not before wounding the pride of this demon lord who had never been harmed by a human before. So yes, reincarnation of the suicide battle god. Yeah, he basically before dying, he's able to get a hit on this demon lord who's never been struck by a human before.
Right.
Um, and as a result of that, even though he dies and he should be passing on to the afterlife, the gods have basically taken an interest in him as someone who was
Oh,
able to do that. And he basically is sent 10 years in time to before this war with demons had started.
oh, wow.
But he does so with he doesn't have any of the strength or magic that he had before, but he has access to the menu. He has access to that kind of log of himself and his memories of the past. So he knows what's going to happen. He knows how
Right.
to acquire power. And it basically then becomes another story of someone who is got knowledge of something that is going to happen and
Yeah.
how he can stop it from happening if he works quick enough and hard enough to gather the allies that he had before and allies that he lost before earlier to help them prepare
Oh,
sooner.
yeah.
Again, like with all of these, art style is absolutely
Hmm.
fantastic. Sorry, I just chat something on my dog because I can't hear what he's doing, but I imagine it will show up in the audio. So
um, I really like the sound of that. Like, I'm kind of like in my own head. I'm in this kind of lane of thinking. Imagine like being sent back, to the 90s and almost kind of being like preparing. I know sending the hero back's been done before in like, Terminator. There was one on Amazon Prime with Chris Pratt and stuff, but it still sounds like an exciting concept to having that experienced all those things beforehand and then going back to then prepare even bigger and better for. I like that. I really like that.
yeah, it's a good one. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's actually just today come
Hmm.
back from its season one break.
Oh wow.
Because typically, like a lot of them, you'll find that they'll go in seasons, and then the
Mm.
artists will take a little while to kind of rest up so that they
Sure.
don't get ill and stuff. So they finally come back today, which I've noticed. So I'm gonna read that after this session,
That's cool. I like
no
that.
doubt. Good stuff. I'm not going to go too much into it. I think that I'm going to start going through these a little bit quicker because there's not a lot I can say about spoiling things, and I don't want to spoil things in the hopes that people will read them because they are really very good. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the show, leave a review on your preferred podcast platform below. So I'm going to move on to my next one here, which is called Solo Max Level Newbie.
What?
Basically, the main character is a YouTuber, a YouTuber, and for this video game, and he's not a very popular one, but there's a video game called The Tower of Trials, and he basically plays it up to the final level, and he beats the game, and then the game ends, like the server shut down and stuff, and he's like, okay, well that's that then, but I wanted to finish this before I retired from being a YouTuber, because this is all I've devoted my life for, and it would be a waste not to see it through to the end, even if I wasn't able to get popular like I wanted to. However, once he sees the ending of the game, he finds that these towers from the Tower of Trials actually appears in the real world.
Oh.
And he, having played the game as heavily as he did, knows what's going to happen. And there are obviously other people who played the game who know what's going to happen, but he's the only one who has played the game up until the end. So he then goes on to become this like very successful player in this like real world version of the game because he knows what's going to happen. He knows how to exploit everything to get all the best gear, to get all the abilities he wants and stuff.
That's really cool.
So another great one. I think it's got an art style very similar to Solo Leveling. The main character is he's not humble in the same way that a lot of the other characters are. He's very arrogant. He knows that he knows more. He knows that he's better because of that, and he isn't afraid to talk about it. So he's like, he will exploit people who know he's powerful because he's like, I can get you what you want, but you need to give me what I want. So he's tired of being a nobody.
I like that. Spicy. Two thoughts. First thought, this is not connected to Solo Leveling, right? This is like a completely
new, completely different thing.
Nice. Second thought, I kind of like the idea of, it sounds a lot, well, I say a lot, there's certain things that sound like Sword Art Online, with Kirito, I can't even say it right now.
Kirito, yeah.
Kirito. There sounds like a lot of elements from that, him finishing that tower and stuff, and then the service gets shut down, and him, because he was a beta tester, knowing, certain hints and tricks and stuff, which was really cool. But yeah, I kind of like the idea that it still melded into New World, which I guess they kind of did with Sword Art, with something scale.
Ordinary scale, yeah, with the movie, yes,
the VR stuff, which was really cool. I really like.
But this isn't VR, man. It's the real world. But the most brilliant gimmick in this whole thing is the fact that with the Tower of Trials appearing in the real world, you're still able to do the YouTubing. So you can choose to stream your time in the Tower of Trials, and people will watch it online. So it's very fun, very interesting. But moving along, I actually listed a lot more here than I thought I would, but I might not let you do them all. We have The Reaper of the Drifting Moon.
That's a good title. That's a strong title.
Unlike the others, this doesn't have gates, it doesn't have hunters, it doesn't have reincarnation or regression. This is its own thing. And it's basically like a Far Eastern, like kind of martial arts style title. And it's basically about a guy who's a kid who's down on his luck. He's living in poverty. He's struggling to survive. He's shown kindness by a stranger, and then he wakes up in a dungeon. In complete darkness, and there are like poisonous snakes and other sorts of dangers in the dark, and basically he has to either resolve himself to die or resolve himself to survive. And after he survives by eating snakes and stuff like that, the door is open one day, and he ventures out and he explores a bit, and he finds that there are other children there as well, about around his
Wow.
age, who have all been
Yeah.
in similar situations. But like in his instance, he had none of his senses because it was completely dark and
Mm.
silent. There was nothing there. Whereas other people in other places, like they had light, but they didn't have all the other stuff. And you find out that a
Oh.
lot of people died, and then as they kind of explore, they find out that they're actually in this like kind of underground facility, which is being used to train assassins.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it becomes for a little portion of it, it becomes very battle royale in that they're basically told only a certain amount of you are getting out of here alive, and those people are
Mm.
going to be like this elite assassin force.
Yeah.
Um, so it's basically like that. It's really interesting because it's very cutthroat. It's very dark. You see a lot of violence,
Mhm.
and then as the story advances, obviously they get better, they grow older, and eventually they do get out. And then there's a betrayal, and all of the assassins are, and that's as far as I'll go. Um,
Oh.
so it's very very interesting, and to the point where it's actually, I think, without spoiling it too much, I think that the main character, you start off
Mhm.
thinking that he's going to be like the hero, when
Mhm.
actually it's a very anti-hero story.
Oh.
Yeah, it then it ends up being very much like that, which is a lot of fun. Um,
As you were just explaining that, I was getting shades of remember in Demon Slayer where they go through those like training, they have to take down a demon like, as a
yeah, and
group
so
of
many people
newbies.
die, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. Like I was getting shades of that. So that yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds really cool. I like that.
yeah. Another very good one. Beautiful art style. Currently really heated up, really intense at the moment.
Ooh.
So, and on to the next. Now,
Uh-huh.
this next one here, the game that I came from, which I believe is based on a web novel again.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
started reading this. It's currently, I think, 150 or so chapters.
Right.
I started reading it last Saturday evening, and I
Right.
finished reading it on Sunday evening. Like getting up to date, like it's obviously still ongoing.
Uh-huh.
Um, Basically, it's a story about it's complex in that it's basically set in an online game,
Right.
but there are some real world elements in the, if because of the way that this game activates your brain, it's like a full dive sort of system. Like
Mhm.
if you achieve awakening in the game, you can also, it also affects your real life body, so you end up being able to manifest some of your
Oh.
powers in the real world. But the story is basically following a protagonist who, he's not got a very high awakening level. He's a loser. He gets bullied at school, to the point where he gets beaten to death by a bully who's got a much higher awakening. Because the way that it works is that when this awakening thing starts happening, those
Mhm.
people are considered more important in society,
Right.
because
Okay.
depending on how your awakening is, no normal human can go against you. Like you're
Yeah.
like that strong. And he basically dies, but then he dies of all these regrets. He basically wakes up, and he has he's alive again. He's in his body, but
Right.
he's different.
Oh.
And he basically finds out that it's actually just after the time's gone back, and it's just after the game having been released.
Oh,
So
wow.
he finds, so there aren't any awakens yet. There aren't any people who have got these abilities. He's like, if I get into this now and
Mhm.
I work really hard using the knowledge I have, because he played it so much, he just did started late, so he was never able to get ahead because it was such
Right.
a competitive game. He
Yeah.
realizes that he can change things for himself, and it's not a story of him looking to make the world better. It's a story of him
Mm.
looking to make his own life better, and but it's very good. Like, as you can
That's
see, I've
cool.
read like 150 chapters in like the space of like a day or two. Um, I
And
think the idea of being an online world like that is always very appealing to me. It feels very like dot hack.
yeah. Yeah, I like that. Is one question I had, if he gets injuries in the game, do they also inflict his real body?
No, so if you get injuries in the game, they stay in the game. It's just that
Right.
I believe that because you don't get to do the awakening within the game until you're like level like 10, I don't think. And
Okay.
then like even then, if you awaken in gaming, you've only got like a low percentage of awakening level, which is like I think his original awakening level is like 8%. It
Uh-huh.
doesn't activate you in real life.
Right.
It's only if you get like you like kind of. It's only if you're very lucky does it do you awaken in real life as well.
Ah.
But when you awaken in real life, depending on how strong your visualization of yourself, of your online self and your real world self is,
Mhm.
you can manifest like certain levels of your power in real life. So essentially, if you have a
Mm.
strong enough synchronization,
Yeah.
you could manifest your full in-game power in the real world.
I was just thinking, that's like the first Assassin's Creed game, right?
Yeah, it's a very bleeding effect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Ooh,
But
that's
another
cool.
very good title. And a
Mm.
very recent one for me. So we're going to move on. We're going to move on. I've only got five more. So
5 more.
five more. We have player who returns 10,000 years later. And this is basically a story of a guy, regular guy, and one day out of the blue, he falls into hell.
Oh,
And while he's in hell, he basically has to fight for his life to survive.
right.
Um, and he inherits this like, kind of like power of predation, which allows him to eat other demons. And he
Ooh.
basically spends 10,000 years in hell, uh, during which time he fights and defeats everything until he becomes the king of hell.
Nice, cool.
And then he finds a way to return to the real world. Because
Mm.
that's all he's wanted this whole time. He's just wanted to get
Yeah.
back to the real world. He's wanted to eat kimchi and play video games. This is what all he's wanted to do. And he basically finds a way to return to the real world. He finds out that the real world has been plagued by gates, and
Ah.
like people have awakened in the time that he's been away.
Mhm.
And comes back. He's like a level 1, and he's obviously gone from being like this demon god, but he finds out that
Yeah,
he's still got his like demon powers that he had got. So
of
even though
course.
he's like weak as hell now, he can use all of those abilities, and he awakens new abilities as he gets stronger. To the point, but he finds out that he's like the only human that he knows of who can utilize like the dark power of demons. Very good,
Ooh.
because again, it's another like kind of selfish anti-hero where he's
Mhm.
obviously lived in such a situation for so long. His empathy isn't there.
Yeah.
So he is not afraid to be the demon that he was forced to become. And as a result, he does some pretty fucked up stuff. um,
That's quite imaginative. I kinda like it. It sounds weird. I can imagine that being like a Jet Li, Jason Statham movie. Like
I can see it. I can see it. It's really good. All of these are definitely worth reading, even if you just like give it like a little, like
Mhm.
a little like a sample,
Yeah.
to see what you like. But we're going to move along quickly because I want to get through this list. We have Return of the Disaster Class Hero.
I think I may
So
have
this
seen this advertised, but go
Yeah,
on.
so this is a great one. It's the main character is basically the greatest hero on Earth, and he's part of a group of 12 other heroes who all
Uh-huh.
kind of like are related to a member of the Zodiac,
Oh,
of the
cool.
Western Zodiac, not the Eastern Zodiac. So like Sagittarius and Libra and Leo and stuff. Uh,
Mhm.
and basically, they're trying to conquer this like tower which is plaguing the Earth. Um, and when he defeats the demon, that when this hero defeats the demon lord, I can't remember what it was so long ago. He's on a break at the moment. Um,
Right.
they find themselves getting stabbed in the back, and they fall into the depths of this tower and are left for dead.
Right.
And at this point, the fight was so tough, like he's lost like one of his legs, he's lost one of his arms, he's scarred up to hell,
Wow.
but he continues to survive in this tower,
Right.
and fighting and surviving, even though like there's barely anything left. And then one day, he like a power awakens in him,
Mhm.
and he wakes up on the outside of the tower, and he's no
Oh.
longer all scarred up anymore. He's got his limbs back, but he finds out that loads of like 20 years have passed, and during that time, those heroes have gone on to become like really powerful in the world.
Oh.
Um, and some of them have become very corrupt. Some of them are still quite like noble, but they're kind of like
Mm.
they've been sent on the wrong path. Um, and he basically comes back. He's like, I'm going to find who did that to me, and
Mhm.
I'm going to make them pay for it.
Nice.
But
And
everyone
that
knows who everyone. So the thing is, everyone knows who he is, but they don't know who he is. So everyone knows the name of him because he's like this hero that saved the world. But
20 years ago.
everyone thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
So, but he's like still immensely powerful, and he's got all these like
Mm.
batshit abilities and stuff.
That's cool. I was just going to say, almost like a revenge story.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of revenge to some degree. I think that I'm hesitant to say revenge actually because he doesn't seem to be seeking revenge. It's more
answers.
he's looking for answers, and he's just I guess revenge is the right way. But whenever I think of revenge, I always think of like revenge to the extreme. He just seems to want to he wants to get what he's owed.
Okay. Okay.
And so I don't think he necessarily wants that person to whoever did do it wants he doesn't think he wants them to die. He
It's
does
not
want them
like a
to
Sasuke Itachi level of
yeah.
revenge.
Again, if you read it, you get what I mean.
I'm here to
Okay.
hear.
Okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. Reformation of the deadbeat noble.
I've seen this advertised. Definitely recognize that cover.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting story. It's basically about a noble, and he's deadbeat. He spends all his days just lounging around in bed. He doesn't want to achieve anything. Doesn't everyone thinks really little of him because of his attitude? But one day he has a dream about this like man standing swinging a sword, and he can't stop thinking about this man swinging this sword and how strong this guy looks. And he
Yeah.
basically decides he kind of gets like fixated on this idea of this guy swinging the sword, and he starts to goes down to his like family's like training grounds. He starts to swing a sword, and it's basically a story of him like kind of growing as a swordsman.
Ooh.
Um, finally gets enrolled into like a swordsman academy where everyone doesn't think very much of him. They don't think he's got any talent, but then it turns out that actually through just sheer hard work, he is incredibly strong. Um,
Ooh.
it There's not really much to say. It's very different to the other stories. There's no gates or anything like that. It's just basically a magic, swords and magic kind of story. There are
Nice.
demons, but it's mostly people. Really interesting story. Gotten really interesting lately as you've learnt some things about the man in the dream.
Ooh.
So, but another one. I think it's a bit of a slow start, but
Mhm.
it's another very good one, especially when you get to like the midway point and like some more crazy sword battles are happening. You start seeing some very good composition of chapters in terms of what happens in them.
Interesting. I like that.
Right, we're getting there. We're getting there. We've got the return of the SSS class ranker. This is another game. This is another story which is set in an online game,
Mhm.
and basically the main character. It says Lokan there, but his name is Roken,
Okay.
as it says at the bottom. He's basically a berserker. And he was one of the strongest guys in this virtual reality game called The Lord. But he basically is hunted down by a guild called Valhalla, I think it's called,
Okay.
and their leader's called Odin.
Nice.
And basically, in them destroying his avatar, he loses everything. But when they do that, he wakes up, and it is 3 years ago
Oh.
in the real world.
Yeah.
And he's like, the game's just come out. Now is the time. Like I can get
Mhm.
back to where I was, and I can destroy them. So this is a revenge story in the true sense because he's doing this because he wants to destroy the people who destroyed him in his previous life.
I see.
And he as you can see here, his name in the game was the King of Violence. Um, and this is animated, or sorry, drawn in almost a, a very similar style to Solo Leveling,
Hmm.
except in where Solo Leveling had a very quite a noble character as their main
Yeah.
character. This guy, he is selfish. He only cares about money and getting what he wants. Um,
Ooh.
and exploiting his knowledge of the game to get hidden quests, to get ahead of everyone else. To, I think there's a whole thing about when housing becomes available in the game, he
Uh-huh.
uses all the money he made on all of these early quests that he knew about that no one else knew about to buy all the houses available in the auction, and then sold rents all the houses to the
Oh,
guilds because the
wow.
guilds want the houses.
That's amazing. I
And
like
then when
that.
he gets to a certain level, he finds that you can start crafting yourself at a certain level. You get access to crafters. So he
Mm.
then, the first one to do that, he then makes a load of the cheapest craftable weapon, which is better than most of the weapons you can buy. And he sells them and makes a ton of money because he's monopolizing the system to the point that the game's like changes the game's an AI, and it basically changes the rules so that he cannot
Ah,
exploit it anymore.
I see. I see. That's cool. I have to admit, this cover looks amazing as well. That is so cool.
After this, I will share with you a scene from the most recent chapter, so you can see how batshit it gets. Because I think you'd really enjoy this one because it's not that
That's
long. This one's not that long.
okay.
So we're going to move on to the final one.
Drum
Sorry,
roll.
guys. This is quite the episode. We have my school life pretending to be a worthless person. So basically, in this story, our main character, mankind has basically discovered the essence of the soul, and it can
Right.
be manifested as a power.
Ooh.
And once this happens, humanity starts to society changes because people start ranking people based on the potential power of their soul.
Hmm.
So it ranks from I think S to F. And
Right.
obviously, if you are an F rank person with F rank soul, you aren't worth anything. Like, people look down on you because your power is worthless. And the
Hmm.
story is about a guy who he's enrolled in this military school because it became kind of a very militant thing because everyone's got these powers. They need to be regimented a little bit more.
Yeah.
And he's basically in the school. His power is considered F rank, and he's considered worthless because all he can do is summon this knife. Um, but what you go on to find out is that this guy, his he actually has a power which is better than the knife, but he doesn't want to use it because
Oh.
his power is actually S rank, but it's called absolute killing intent.
Ooh.
And when that power activates, he has to kill the person that he's facing.
Right.
Like, he becomes like a bloodthirsty murderer.
Right.
Um, so he's basically trying to live life as this worthless person because he is scared of what will happen if his power activates. Because and you do have some encounters where some very dangerous people get involved, and he's forced to use his power, and he murders this terrorist cell.
Wow.
Because he becomes,
That's
it's
crazy.
not so much that he just gets this desire to destroy. All his
Mm.
abilities, all his stats go right up. So he becomes an absolute killing machine. Um, so he's basically, I love how it says here. It says, "With a soul for killing, will he be able to get his killing intent under control to prove that there are no ranks to someone's soul and stuff like that."
Wow. It's a really interesting concept because, you know, here we are in 2023, and years and years and years, we've seen the idea of, man having a monster inside them, maybe vampires or werewolves, and they try to control their urges to monster out and stuff. This is a really interesting spin on that sort of concept, the Jekyll and Hyde sort of
Yeah,
ideal, isn't it?
his whole personality changes when he uses his ability for real.
Mm,
And him only summoning the knife is him at his trying his hardest to make sure that only the knife manifests, because if anything
I
else
see.
happens. But as the story goes on, he learns that he meets some people who kind of inspire him think that he doesn't have to be scared of his power, he just needs to be able to control it better.
Hmm.
And he then starts to be able to learn how to use his power like in different stages, so he doesn't lose control of himself. It's very good.
I
It's
like
very
it.
different to the other stories that I'm reading at the
Yeah,
moment.
definitely hear that. Wow, what a list of recommendations.
It's basically the episode of Undisputed Anime is basically just TsutsuDae talking about web comics that he is obsessed with at the moment.
No, hey, we're here to. This is the show. This is what we. It's a break from me gushing over this season's anime. So no, I really enjoy it. Plus, I'm inspired to read some of those, especially that SSS Berserker one that you mentioned. Um, hey, if you've enjoyed this episode, let us know. Our email is linked in the description down below. As always, check out Surfshark again in the link in the description. Feel free to follow us on our social medias. TsutsuDae, thank you so much for putting this list together. I'm sure there's many people who are listening or watching this on our YouTube channel who have been inspired. So thank you for putting this together.
The list could have been twice as long, I assure you.
Well, hey, I mean, if people really enjoyed this, let us know. We could always do a part two.
I
Maybe.
wouldn't be opposed. I've got many others. Many others.
But as always, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we shall no doubt see you soon with a not Mugen Train, Demon Slayer review.
Demon Slayer, Swordsmith Village.
That's gonna be fun.
Woo!
I'm excited.
Same.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Peace.